From the PEP Radio Newsroom, this is the Morning News Blast for October 19th, 2025. Protesting the direction of the country under President Donald Trump, people gathered Saturday in the nation's capital and communities big and small across the U.S. for No Kings demonstrations that the president's Republican Party disparaged as Hate America rallies. With signs such as "Nothing is more patriotic than protesting" or "Resist fascism," in many places, the events looked more like a street party. There were marching bands, a huge banner with the U.S. Constitution's "We the People" preamble that people could sign, and demonstrators wearing inflatable costumes, particularly frogs, which have emerged as a sign of resistance in Portland, Oregon. It was the third mass mobilization since Trump's return to the White House, and came against the backdrop of a government shutdown that not only has closed federal programs and services, but is testing the core balance of power as an aggressive executive confronts Congress and the courts in ways that protest organizers warn are a slide toward authoritarianism. Trump himself was spending the weekend at his Mar-A-Lago home in Florida. "They say they're referring to me as a king. I'm not a king," Trump said in a Fox News interview that aired early Friday, before he departed for a $1 million per plate MAGA Inc. fundraiser at his club. Let that sink in, folks. Later Friday, a Trump campaign social media account mocked the protests by posting a computer-generated video of the president clothed like a monarch, wearing a crown and waving from a balcony. People packed into the New York City's Times Square, Boston Common, and Chicago's Grant Park, outside state capitals in Tennessee and Indiana and Pennsylvania, and a courthouse in Billings, Montana, and at hundreds of smaller public spaces. More than 2,600 rallies were planned on the day, organizers said. Many protesters were angered by attacks on their motives. In Washington, Brian Raymond said being called a terrorist all week by Republicans was pathetic. "This is America. I disagree with their politics, but I don't believe that they don't love this country," Raymond said, carrying a large U.S. flag. "I believe they are misguided. I think they are power hungry." More than 1,500 people gathered in Birmingham, Alabama, evoking and openly citing the city's history of protests and the critical role it played in the civil rights movement 2 generations ago. "It just feels like we're living in America that I don't recognize," said Jessica Yother, a mother of 4. She and other protesters said they felt camaraderie by gathering in a state where Trump won nearly 65% of the vote last November. "It was so encouraging," Yother said. "I walked in and thought, here are my people." In San Francisco, hundreds of people spelled out "No Kings" and other phrases with their bodies on Ocean Beach. Salt Lake City demonstrators gathered outside the Utah State Capitol to share messages of hope and healing after a protester was fatally shot during the city's first No Kings march in June. Big rallies like this give confidence to people who have been sitting on the sidelines but are ready to speak up, Democratic U.S. Senator Chris Murphy said in an interview with the Associated Press. While protests earlier this year against Elon Musk's cuts and Trump's military parade drew crowds, organizers say this one is uniting the opposition. Top Democrats such as Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and Independent Senator Bernie Sanders are joining what organizers view as an antidote to Trump's actions, from the administration's clampdown on free speech to its military-style immigration raids. "We're here because we love America," Sanders said, addressing the crowd from a stage in Washington. He said the American experiment is in danger under Trump, but insisted, "We the people will rule." Republicans sought to portray protesters as far outside the mainstream and a prime reason for the government shutdown, now in its 18th day. From the White House to Capitol Hill, GOP leaders called them communists and Marxists. They said Democratic leaders, including Chuck Schumer, are beholden to the far left flank and willing to keep the government shut to appease those liberal forces. "I encourage you to watch. We call it the Hate America rally. That will happen Saturday," said House Speaker Mike Johnson of Louisiana. "Let's see who shows up for that," Johnson said, listing groups including Antifa types, people who hate capitalism, and Marxists in full display. Many demonstrators in response said they were meeting such hyperbole with humor. noting that Trump often leans heavily on theatrics, such as claiming that cities he sends troops to are war zones. So much of what we've seen from this administration has been so unserious and silly that we have to respond with the same energy, said Glenn Kalbaugh, a Washington protester who wore a wizard hat and held a sign with a frog on it. New York police reported no arrests during that city's protests. Democrats have refused to vote on legislation that would reopen the government as they demand funding for health care. Republicans say they are willing to discuss the issue later, only after the government reopens. The situation is a potential turnaround from just 6 months ago when Democrats and their allies were divided and despondent. Schumer, in particular, was berated by his party for allowing an earlier government funding bill to sail through the Senate without using it to challenge Trump. What we are seeing from the Democrats is some spine, said Ezra Levine, a co-founder of Indivisible, a key organizing group. The worst thing the Democrats could do right now is surrender. And that's the News Blast for this hour. If you are watching our news videos on YouTube, please be sure to subscribe to our channel. If you like PEP Radio, visit the PEP Radio page at paequality.com to make your donation to keep our station going strong. Up next, we have the Meadville area weather forecast here on PEP Radio.